My name is Chelsea. I am 28 years old. And work as a preschool teacher. I came home for the New Year's holiday, expecting the usual chaotic family dinner. Instead, I pushed open the front door of our house in Madison and was met with dead silence. The lights were off, and the house was freezing. A sharp instinct told me something was terribly wrong. I dropped my bags and sprinted down the hallway to the master bedroom. My father was lying on the edge of the bed, HI's body curled inward. He was clutching the left side of HI's chest, gasping for air, HI's shirt sucked in cold sweat. He was struggling to breathe through what looked like a massive heart attack. I rushed to HI's side, reaching for my phone to call for help. That was when I saw it. Sitting perfectly centered on the nightstand was a yellow sticky note. IT was written in MY. Matt Carell's handwriting. Больше чем snorts. Больше чем no emergency numbers, no panic, and absolutely no concern. Just a cold instruction. IT read, you are matrant. Sister went to Hawaii. Stay and take care of your father. They had left him here to suffer while they boarded a fly to an island resort. I quickly dialed 911, but my fat hair's trembling. He reached out and grabbed my wrist. HI's grip was weak, but HI's eyes were sharper than I had seen in years. He looked at me, fighting through the intense pain, and whispered, will you help me teach the my lesson? I did not hesitate. I nodded and pressed call. If you have ever dealt with toxic relatives who think they can use you and get away with it without any consequences, you need to hear the story. Hit that subscribe button, give this video a like, and let me tell you exactly how my father and I delivered the ultimate reality check. Early the next morning, the steady beep of a heart monitor echoed through the intensive care unit. At the hospital, I sat in a stiff plastic chair beside the bed, watching my fat hair's chest rise and fall. Dr. Aries, the attending cardiologist, walked into the room holding a clipboard. He looked at me with a serious expression and explained that my father had suffered a severe myocardial infarction. The doctor stated clearly that if the ambulance had arrived 5 minutes later, my father would not have survived the night. I swallowed hard and followed the Aries out into the busy hallway to fill out the hospital admission forms. The paperwork required a designated emergency contact and a medical decision maker. I looked at the blank line on the form, knowing that the 2 people who should have been listed were currently thousands of miles away. I picked up the pen and wrote my own name, signing as HI's sole emergency contact. I returned to the room and resumed my place beside the bed. A few hours later, my fat hair's eyelids fluttered. He groaned softly, shifting against the hospital sheets. I immediately stood up and leaned over the bed railing. He blinked against the harsh fluorescent lights, HI's gaze slowly focusing on my face. He looked confused for a fleeting moment before the memory of the previous night seemed to wash over him. HI's breathing hitched slightly as he realized where he was. He turned HI's head, scanning the small room. When he realized we were alone, HI's voice broke the silence. Where is Ran? He asked, chest on weak hand. I froze. I did not know how to answer that question without making HI's blood pressure speaky. Instead of speaking, I just looked down at my hands, unable to meet HI's eyes. My silence gave him the exact answer he needed. My father slowly reached out HI's right hand, pointing toward HI's personal belongings resting on the small bedside table. He wanted HI's phone. I hesitated, worried about HI's stress levels after such a major medical event. But HI's stern look left no room for argument. I handed him the device. He unlocked the screen and Imediatele appenit ICS social media. Feed. I stood currently still, watching. The glow of the screen reflect in ICS. Tired eyes. Right at the top of ICS feed. Was a fresh post uploaded a few hours ago. My mother Diane and my sister Sabrina were sitting on a sunlit pisha at a luxury resort in Maui. My mother was holding a crystal glass filled with Yihpingsivi campaign, flashing a white carefree smile at the camera. Next to her, my sister was posing with 3 large shopping bags from a hand. Duty-free about it. The caption beneath the photo read, escaping the freezing winter, enjoying the real life on the island. There was no mention of the New Year holiday, no mention of the family day left behind, and absolutely no sign of worry or concern. My father stared at the glowing screen for a long time. The heart monitor beside him beeped at a slightly faster pace, but he did not say a word. He did not yell. He did not through the phone. He simply pressed the power button, placed the device face down on HA's chest, and stared blankly at the white ceiling tiles. For my entire life, he had always found a way to excuse their selfish behavior. He used to say my mother was just stressed from managing the household chore, that my sister needed a break from her demanding job. This time, the excuses ran out. The heavy silence in the hospital room signaled the complete collapse of HA's lifelong illusions. He finally saw a term for exactly who they were. They were opportunists, greedy, and entirely devoid of empathy. He turned HA's head slowly, looking directly into MYA's. The warmed and blind talents that usually defined HA's character were completely gone, replaced by a cold, calculating determination. He took a slow, deep breath, wincing slightly from the effort, and spoke in a low, definitive whisper. There is something hidden under the floorboards in my home office. Go get it, and whatever you do, do not let your mother or your sister know. I drove back to our dark house in absolute silence, parked in the driveway, and walked straight into the home office. I locked the heavy wooden door behind me and knelt under the large oak desk. I pressed my fingers against the floorboard, searching for the uneven. As my father had mentioned, the third plank from the left shifted slightly under my weight. I wedged a flared screwdriver into the narrow gap, applying downward pressure until the wood popped up with a sharp crack. Resting inside the shallow cavity was a small grey metal safe. It was surprisingly heavy, covered in a thin layer of dust from being hidden for so long. I grabbed it firmly by the handle, placed it carefully in the trunk of my car, and drove directly back to the hospital. When I walked back into the hospital room, my father was sitting up, slightly, supported by several stiff pillows. I placed the grey safe on the rolling tray table and pushed it over HA's lap. HA's hands trembled slightly as he slowly entered a four-digit combination. The lock snorts clicked loudly, and the heavy lid swung open. Inside, there were no stacks of cash or hidden jewelry. Instead, the box contained thick manila folders filled with complex legal documents, each marked with official red stamps, court seals, and notary signatures. My father pulled out the top folder, resting it carefully on HA's hospital blanket. He took a deep, shaky breath before speaking. Your grandfather was a very private man. My father began, his voice stuttering as he looked at the papers. He passed through a few months ago. I listened in complete silence. My father explained that grandfather Theodore had spent HA's entire life quietly building a massive portfolio of real estate and corporate investments. Because of the sheer size of the estate, the legal probate process took an incredibly long time to clear the local courts. The estate attorney just sent The final confirmation paper seifu. Weeks ago. He continued typing the tick folder. Your mother does not know anything about this inheritance. I kept the tick quiet because I wanted to observe how things would play out before making any permanent financial decisions. He opened the file and handed me a printed summary sheet. The numbers listed on the page were staggering. The inherited assets totaled $24 million, completely secured in a financial trust, along with the deed to a massive waterfront villa located at Lake Mandata. Under Wisconsin law, inherited wealth is considered separate property. My father stated flatly, it does not belong to the marital estate. Diane has absolutely no legal right to touch a single cent of this money. He set the folder down and reached for his letter while on the bedside table, which his fingers fumbled as he pulled out a worn family photograph. It was a picture of the four of us from over a decade ago. He stared at the image, tracing the faces with his thumb. For years, he had directed all his financial resources and emotional support toward my mother and Sabrina, believing their constant demands were just the natural dynamics of a successful family. Meanwhile, I had quietly paid off my own student loans on a preschool teacher's salary, never asking for a handout or a luxury vacation. He looked up from the photograph, looking eyes with me. The hospital monitors beeped swiftly in the background. I have been wrong for so many years, he said, bitchless voice cracking. With genuine remorse. I gave everything, and the moment I became a burden, they left me to die. He reached out and grasped my hand tightly, bitchless grip much stronger than before. I am not going to let them take this, he said firmly. I need to protect you, Chelsea. You are the only one who actually cares about me. I looked at the legal documents resting on his lap, realizing the immense power he now held. If my mother and sister returned home and discovered the southern world, they would stop at nothing to manipulate him into sharing it. We need to act fast, I told him, matching his serious tone. We should call their estate attorney right now and arrange everything before their fly launched. That Thursday afternoon, the heavy door of the hospital room swung open. My fat-haired attorney, Emmer Vance, walked in, carrying a thick leather briefcase. He was not alone. Two other professionals followed closely behind him, whom he introduced as a certified notary public and an independent witness. Reformer. Vance even opened his briefcase or placed 20 papers on the table. The attending physician stepped into the room to perform a mandatory capacity. The right state of mind before making life-altering decisions. The doctor stood beside the hospital bed and asked a